Well, hello there, and welcome to the Parenting Show. I'm Jennifer Anderson. With me, as always, my friend, family counselor, parenting expert, Alyson Schafer is joining me on the couch. And today, we are talking about maybe a bone of contention for a lot of households, different parenting styles.
Yes, and I have to say, as a family counselor, parents come because they want to talk about their kids, and usually one of the topics is we don't see eye to eye on this. And often as we unpack things, it's like, actually, we're not here to talk about how to discipline the kids. Sometimes we're here because we really have marriage issues. And one of the things that, you can disagree about a car, you can disagree about what wallpaper goes in the dining room, but when you get into the thing that both parents find one of their highest value sets is how to raise the kids. They both love them so much, but if you don't see eye to eye on that, it can really shred a marriage. Mm-hmm. And as much as we have this ideal that, we're going to complete the love of our relationship by starting a family, and it's such a romantic idea. But the truth of the matter is, having children increases marital dissatisfaction, increases our happiness. Sorry. It does. And it comes back later when kids are older, but we need to acknowledge and give importance to that this is a potential real stressor. And rather than thinking you can just go it alone, mm-hmm. getting help like we're going to share today on the show, going for individual counseling if people need it, but take it seriously, because if you really want what's best for your kids, wouldn't it be great to have that healthy, happy marriage? And it's achievable, even with differences.
And we're, over the next half hour, we're going to break this down a little bit more, because it's not just parents, or it's not just mom and dad. It could be step-parents in the mix. It could be grandparents. It could be a nanny. So there's
teachers,
all different elements of
all the people that are going to interact with my kids, right? I don't want you to talk to my kid like that. That's not how we handle those situations in our house. Yeah, like it can be fraught with complications.
So let's talk about just mom and dad.
Okay. Or mom and dad and dad.
Yes. So we are talking about the family who, it's funny because you often hear in TV shows and movies about good cop, bad cop and playing, but this is when it becomes a little more serious.
Yeah. Because
somebody's maybe being perceived as something other than the fun, nice, happy mm-hmm. parent.
And not to say who's playing what role in the family. Mm-hmm. There's somebody who often tends to be more of a softie. This is I'm using their language in my office. Mm-hmm. I'm a bit of a pushover. I'm a bit of a softie. I'm the one who caves. I'm a little gentler. And the other partner, again, the other one, is somebody who's like, you're a pushover, and somebody needs to keep these kids in line. And they tend to be a little firmer, a little stricter. And then depending on if one's stay at home or what the work schedule is, there's often this feeling like, you don't get it because you're gone all day. And it's all fine for you to breeze in here hours later, but of course I'm doing that because I'm just trying to survive. And there's a lack of compassion and empathy because each of them is feeling like you're too strict and you're hurting my children. The other one is saying why can't you get your act together? You step up. And so a lot of it is also just it hurts when your partner doesn't see what you're dealing with, what your dilemma is. It doesn't have compassion for, everyone's trying their best. People aren't sitting around having bonbons saying and I don't think I'm just going to be a bad parent today. Right? It's that's the best I got. That's right.
Well, and we have a show topic coming up about feeling like a bad parent. So that may come down to it, right? That whole idea of if your partner doesn't think that you're doing a great job.
Yeah.
That's a stressor on you as well.
And so, whenever there's then behavioral issues with the kids, then each of them feel like you're part of the contributing factor to why this behavior is going on. And if you would just listen to the way that I think we should parent, this problem would go away. And so we get into this blaming, which causes friction. And then they'll one parent will take a parenting class with me, or one parent will read one of my books. Mm-hmm. And then they have this I'm all Alyson Adlerian enlightened. And so I have twice the information that you do. And now you must do, the Adlerian way. And I think sometimes when one person gets extra educated, they have a new lens on, mm-hmm. They're not just guessing anymore. This is this is empirical evidence that this is how, and I don't like it when people come into counseling and they're basically saying, could you just tell, her, him,
they're wrong.
They're wrong. And it's like, that's not my role. That's not what it's about, right?
I will say that a few times over the last 14 years, I have been called Alyson at home because I will say something, and the reply I get is, "Thank you, Alyson."
Yeah, page 86.
That's right. I've been known to throw a when-then statement somewhere.
Yeah. Well, and so I want to just say a little bit more, too, about parenting styles, because even when I teach the course, I use a simplistic rubric that's easy for parents to understand. And, again, this goes back to some of the parenting styles, leadership style research that we've had. Baumrin is the big person. And anyways, we kind of, some of the names that we know is this permissive or jellyfish, the laissez-faire, doormat type parent, all those kind of words to describe that. And then the other one is more that ruling with the iron fist, the brick wall, Barbara Colarasso calls it, autocratic is other language that we say. And then this middle one, which we call firm and friendly, or backbone parenting you sometimes hear, authoritative rather than autocratic. And I find those two words too similar, so I don't use those because I use the word democratic. But it makes it sound as if there's really only 3 buckets. And that's true for easy categorization, and that makes it easy to understand. One is really friendly without being firm. One is really firm without being friendly. And the one in the middle is we can be both firm and friendly at the same time. And how do we figure that out? So that's a nice simplistic way to make 3 buckets. But the truth is, and when we're digging into these issues that come up with couples around differences in parenting styles in the family, is that each of us were also raised by parents, and each of us also were children, making rules about how to be safe and how the world operates and what we need to do to fit in and gain our significance, and all those beliefs that we came up with. And we might have had some missing experiences. We might have had a parent that really didn't meet our needs, and we felt neglected, and we didn't feel cared for. And so you grow up, you have kids, and you make this mental note to yourself, when I grow up and I'm a parent, none of my children will ever have to experience that terrible feeling that I had of calling out and no one answering my calls or whatever. And so you try to do sleep training with that person, and they hear their kid crying, and the husband say, just let them cry, just let them cry, we're sleep training. And they're like, that's somebody crying and they need me, and I know what that feels like, and I have to go. And for somebody else, it might be around food. Food is love. Food is love. How can I take away their plate if they get down from the table? I wouldn't be showing my love. In my world, food is love. So each of us has our own internal belief systems and past experiences that is more complicated than just 3 buckets. And if we can realize that our partners have that too, and that's what informs them. And so to get curious about each other and see how that plays into our current dilemma just sort of opens up our minds to not just think somebody is being difficult or not getting it and stubborn.
So I know you're going to start to break that down and see how we can help. There is a question, and thank you to everyone at home. Alyson always reaches out via social media and your website, and people sending questions. This is one of them. Mismatched parenting style is very much on my mind today. My husband and I deal with this often. He's way too harsh, in my opinion, and we have a lot of tension over it. I don't know how to resolve it. Would love some help. We've talked a little bit about this, so now comes the help part.
Turn into action. Into action. So, as a counselor, I want to look at what that word harsh means, okay? Because obviously we have protections for children that's, and do no harm. Corporal punishment is still legal in Canada, sadly. But the truth is this something that we need to call the police, call Children's Aid? Likely she would say, no, I just mean he's too strict or he raises his voice or whatever. Is that optimal? No. But is he a human being and that's how he deals with the kids? What I would say is children learn where their parents' bubbling point is. They know their parents' buttons. They have a very good idea that if they jump on the couch, dad is going to yell because he's the strict one. So when the child gets up on the couch, they're not suddenly like, what did daddy do? It's like, you knew that that was going to be the harsher reaction that you were going to get for that parent, right? So that's why I say it's more important for parents or in terms of your kids' development, is that you need to just authentically be yourself and be predictable to your kid than to be erratic. I don't care if dad's the one that's really terse and he's going to do the yelling when you get on the couch and mom's going to ignore it. So long as that's consistent, kids can figure it out. Didn't you figure out your parents?
Yeah.
You kind of,
well, you knew who to ask.
right?
You knew who
what
to...
you wanted to get away with.
Yeah, of course.
So kids know dad is strict, is what I'm saying, and she doesn't need to apologize for his person. Clearly she loved him enough to start a family. Those kids love him because they're their dad, and if they don't want to get harsh treatment, they could also decide to move a little bit more in line, is what I'm saying. I just don't want her to think that those kids are the victim of dad's harshness.
Right.
And so when we try to protect our kids and we insert ourselves between our partner and our children, that's when we start getting sort of a 3 against 1 or 2 against 1, depending how many kids there are. When mom becomes or dad becomes, somebody tries to like jump in between and kind of like, don't you do that to the children. Kids actually also watch that dynamic, and that can stir up the pot for other misbehaviors. So what we want to do is for kids to, and as they grow, and we want to have conversations that say, you have a relationship with your father, and if you'd like to change it, then you need to speak up. Rather than, I'm going to go fight your battles. And now they're going to see parental conflict, which is far scarier for kids.
So don't undermine your partner's behavior.
I would just say, have faith in the kids. Don't intercede. Don't interrupt. You can say, I wish you wouldn't yell. Can we talk about something else we might do in those situations? He might even say, I don't like yelling, and say, I wonder if we together could put our minds together on doing something differently. But I don't want to. My job's not to protect the kids in that way.
Right. And it's not a conversation that needs to be had in the heat of that moment. It's a conversation when all parties are not.
Part of why when we have a parenting disagreement about how things are, like let's say they yell at the kid and, at the table and they say, go to your room, get down from the table, go to your room. You say, that is not the way we, come back to the table, come back to the table. We don't do that. Now you got a kid watching a marital fight over them, and they're like, I don't know, do I go to my room to come back to the table? I don't know. Now I got my mom in trouble, and that is way psychically more distressing for a kid. So the general rule is whoever starts the discipline finishes the discipline. So if the kid gets down from the table, says, that's not fair. All I did was, bubble my milk or something. You can have empathy. You can say, yeah, I'm sorry, your father sent you to your room. All right? Now they're in their room and you're going, what was that?
That's right.
Didn't you read Alyson's book, page 89? No. Let me just get her on the phone. Sidebar, you can say, yes. Hey, that seemed a little heated and rashed. Can we talk about how we handle those kinds of behaviors? And so, sidebar, have your parenting talks.
Not even talk about the behaviors, or how about talk about your day? Because maybe it's not about parenting styles. Maybe it's just you had a bad day and you overreacted at the table. You know what I mean?
Totally. Totally.
It has nothing to do with the parenting issues and the skills that you have as a parent. Has to do with having a bad day.
And how lovely to be able to say, I love you so much, and I know that you love our kid, and to be that short with your wick tells me your cup must be pretty full, That's a loving response.
Can I ask another question, changing it up a little bit here? My mom is elderly and has moved in with us so I can care for her. Unfortunately, she seems to favor one of my sons over the other, and it's so blatant. I've mentioned this to her, but she disagrees with me and says that's nonsense, but I know I'm right. I am worried about how this is hurting my other son. Can you teach an old dog new tricks? Will she ever hear me and change at 84? So a couple of issues. First, this is maybe favoritism. So we can talk about favoring or the perception of favoring one over the other, and then we'll swing into non-parent, different parenting skills.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, a tough situation. What's the saying? God grant us the serenity to change the things we can, accept the things we can't, and the wisdom
Yes.
to know the difference.
Yes.
You
You're
know,
pretty good at that.
Is
on
that
the
all
fly.
right?
Yeah.
Is that good?
Yeah.
So, but the idea there is deciding what influence does the mom have, you know, in the household to convince another person that maybe the way that they're behaving is creating a sense of favoritism. And you can make your argument, you can present your issue, but if they're like, no, I'm not, and that's as far as you can get, we can't really, we're never responsible for another person's behavior, and we can't change another person's behavior. And so that's a hard pill to swallow. Now, we can't influence behavior by changing ourselves, changing what we do. So it's more about, I don't know whether or not your mom's ever going to change about how she does it, but what are some things that I can do? Some things that I can do is I might advocate a little bit more for the one who might, if you're listening through the ears of the one who doesn't feel favored, I might say something like, if she says like, oh, Jamie's picture's so great, I might say, and Janie made a picture too. I'm sure she'd like to hear how you feel about her picture. And if she goes like, it's not very good, you might say, wow, you know, it can really hurt when grandma likes one picture and doesn't like another. That could really hurt your soul. Like I might just kind of
Reinforce.
Try to in the moment, be the voice of the child who might not be able to speak up about how they're feeling because she just may not have enough what we call theory of mind to actually know how that could be like an ouchie, right? So, you know, that's something I can do. And then even if I don't change grandma at all, at least now I've got one child who says, you know what? I don't know about wacky grandma, but my mom had my back. Right?
Yep.
So, and that may be the best we can do.
Goes back to your behavior.
Yeah.
You can control your behavior.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dealing with parents is
I feel
one
this
thing.
poor lady, you know how hard it is to have kids and have a squeezed generation, let alone when they're under your roof? It always sounds so good. Oh, you can help look after the kids. And then you're like, oh, actually, I got to look after you. It's exhausting. And this generation, there's a lot of that going on.
But you're right. There is a lot of that going on. So when you have multi-generations in a household, now you're dealing with a whole lot of parents under one roof, and they may not all be the parents of the child.
Right.
So how do you get through something like that?
Yeah. So taking a psychological view on this, I want my children to learn, or I think it's healthy for all kids to learn, that you need to figure out every individual that you're going to meet in your life. Whether that's your playmate, whether that's the librarian versus your teacher, whether that's grandma versus an uncle, the guy at the convenience store, you know, where you buy your bubble gum. Every person on this planet is different, and in every person you need to broker a relationship. And you can't expect everyone to be the same as your mother, because otherwise there would just be robots, right? If we're all the same, then we'd be redundant. So as a mom who's like, you know, has ideas and theories about how her kids should be treated, and then tries to go out and broadcast to the world, this is how we handle eating, this is how we handle when they cry, this is how we handle when they, and they're gonna educate everybody so that the child has one singular experience. It's not really how life works. We need to learn that all different people act in different ways, and we need to learn different ways to get our needs met in every single relationship. And so I think we get way too fanatical about getting everybody on the same page. And it's a lot easier to say like, yeah, wacka wacka grandma, or like, yep, you know what? Grandpa's from the old country. He wants to pinch your cheek.
Kiss it.
Yeah, you know, or you know, or whatever it might be. Right. And I think we can be a little bit less lighthearted in the sense that not you as a parent are the most important shaper of your child's life, personality, and belief system. Those other people, even if they're caretaking your child all day long, they still don't shape your child the way you do, even though you might just be home in time to tuck them into bed. You are the primary modeler relationship in their life. So I'm just saying, just downgrade how important you think some of that craziness is. And then if you do feel like, and again, it's hard to generalize because I don't know, if we're talking about a grandma who's actually like abusive, because there was like real abuse in some of our old parenting styles, then it may be where you're saying this living arrangement doesn't work. You know, and that could be tough, but you're going to have to weigh out, I might hurt her feelings, or it might cost more to get a different living arrangement. But if I feel that it's at the cost of real psychological harm and injury to my kid. But again, I'm just like, kids are far more robust than we think.
You mentioned bedtime, and there is a question revolving around bedtime routines. I am a stay-at-home mom with 3 kids, 6, 4, and a newborn. My husband works late and is usually home around the bedtime routine. The kids go wild when he arrives, and I'm exhausted and just want them to go to bed, but he doesn't seem to get it. He winds them up again and wants to play. It's hard to get them settled, so I end up getting mad. How can I convince him he is more of a problem than a help?
Okay.
That was a nice way to say it here. I'm sure it's not said like that at home.
I'm sure there are people going like, answer that one, answer that one. Yeah. And you can tape this and play it back for your partner when they get home.
Just go, I'm just going to sit down and watch this.
Yeah. No, it is common. You know, so I would say, here's the conversation that you might want to have, which is, I totally get that you want to see the kids. And I would love for that to happen. But I would first go, like, let's look after the kids more than our selfish needs for ourselves. Let's actually look and see how much sleep they actually need. Because it could be that you could move things around so that the kids could actually stay up and have time with dad when he got home. If they change their wake-up time, if that was possible. I don't know. So I'd first say, we got to make sure our kids are getting enough sleep. And if that means that maybe the better answer is that you have them all day Saturday and really get your, like, you know, visiting time in with them then great. But otherwise, maybe the best answer is to sit in the driveway and have your Starbucks and finish your podcast before you come home, so that we don't just add another 45 minutes of mayhem, you know, onto the schedule. That we have to be respectful to the needs of kids first, and sleep is a really important piece of that. So see if you can juggle the time. You know, see whether or not can you flex your work schedule. If it's so important, yeah, if it's so important to you, could you actually go in earlier and come back later? It's amazing how I've worked with people who say, like, well, I you know, I don't think they'd go for that at the office. And I go, have you asked? And they're like, no. I go, why don't you ask? And there's all kinds of workplace accommodations for work-life balance now that people never had before. Yeah. You know, so you could see about something like that. But we have to. If you could just say, the reason why I'm asking you not to do this is because I find tuck-ins is really hard. And the point about you can't change other people, you can only change yourself. I might say, oh, you know, if you decide that you want to come in and do that routine, that's really wonderful. But I'd like to tap out and just hand over the whole tuck-in to you then. Right? So if he wants to get them all riled up, then he can be the one that has to work on settling them.
Right. And it's not so much the riled up, and I am not that person, so I can't really relate. I've never rolled around on the floor wrestling with my kids. It's just, I don't think I ever did that. But there's still time. Wait, pin you down. Get home tonight. I'd jump out of nowhere. But for some, that's the interaction, right? The play fighting, the wrestling, the
boys and dads. I actually assign it as homework to fathers and sons who are not connecting.
Right.
It's a really great way for dads and sons to connect.
Right. So it's not so much that he's coming home and purposely riling them up. He's coming home and interacting with them the way that he knows and loves.
Yeah.
And the way that they know and love. So it's a different perspective too when you look at it that way.
Yeah, that's his little way to bond.
I am going to do that, though, when they get home tonight.
Okay, good. I can't wait. Report back. Say, I feel so much more bonded.
That's right.
Why did I do that earlier?
You'll get a call from the kids. I'm going to slip one more in with
Sure.
a couple minutes left. My wife is a wonderful, loving woman, but how can I get her to see that sometimes she loves our kids too much? She doesn't believe she can spoil a child with love, but I can see that she is a total pushover when they demand something and they treat her like their personal servant. I want her to stop doing everything for our kids, but she refuses because she says it makes her happy. This is almost the other side, right? It's some no to wrestle and some no to just cater.
You know, a lot of women, more women than men, I would say, really find a sense of meaning in their life by looking after their kids. It really validates their worth. And it becomes really hard to step back if you've made raising kids your purpose. And we all want to be great at raising our kids. We all want to have family life as one of our values. But for some people, stepping back almost means like, I get diminished if I'm not doing that. And so there's an example too where we might have to actually look at this isn't just somebody who's got a bad parenting style. This is somebody who has a history and they're dealing with something that they learned about how to be important in the world, and it doesn't necessarily mean that it's healthy. It could be avoiding some other parts of her life where they don't feel confident or competent, or maybe they feel really guilty because they left a really high-paying job, and it's like, you know, if I was making this much as a lawyer, I better put this much energy into the family, and it's, you know, it's very hard to sit back and then I'm feeling like, now I feel like I'm not contributing. So I'd want to get into like what's behind that, and chances are there's something in there that says giving to others is how you show love. And if if I say no, because this is another common one, if I get firm and you get upset about it, I might feel like you're rejecting me. And I know in my conscious adult mind that you love me and I'm just setting a boundary, but this little inner child in me from long, long ago, that when people yell at me, that reminds me of being yelled at as, you know, whatever, humiliated by a teacher or yelled at, and I get worried that I'm going to have social rejection, and that becomes a really painful, hard thing for me to do. So when we say like, just do it, just step up, it's way deeper than that.
Right. All right. A lot of information on your website, also available in your books. You're not only a family counselor, you're a best-selling author.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
International speaker. I'm actually speaking in the Ukraine this summer, actually, at the International Adlerian
Amazing.
Congress.
Your books
Follow
are
me
up on the
social,
screen.
too. Sorry. Please talk about my books.
Yeah. They were up on the screen. But all of the information, what you're doing, where you're going, is available on your website.
Absolutely.
Yes. Very good.
And thank you. Thank you for that shout out.
Thank you. And thank you to everyone at home. We, of course, every week on the Parenting Show talk about different topics. All of them are available by going to the YouTube channel, the Rogers TV YouTube channel, and searching the Parenting Show. So there's lots of different topics. Thanks so much for watching this one, and we'll see you next time.